So hello everyone, my name is Jodie Heap. I am a scholarly communications and research support librarian, and today's session we will be looking at navigating open access and publication. What is it? What does it mean? What's all the terminology? Let's get into it a little bit. So just for my own pleasure, please can everyone give me a reaction thumbs up just so I know you're here and you're live and you're a human. Just makes me feel a bit like I'm not talking to myself. Yay! We love a reaction. Excellent. Okay, fabulous. Okay, so in today's session, we are going to hopefully learn to distinguish between gold, green, and diamond open access models. We're going to be looking at recognizing publisher and funder open access requirements. We're going to have a bit of a discussion around identifying and avoiding predatory or deceptive publishers. Unfortunately, they do exist. And we're going to look at the support that is available around article processing charges and publishing guidelines. So I will say this is a slightly text heavier slide set than I would normally prefer to do, but it's a complex area in some ways. In some ways it's very simple, but in some ways there's a lot has happened in the last sort of 25 years. So we'll get into it. I've tried to break the slides up, but if at any point something's not clear or you want me to talk around it a little bit more, just shout out or pop a comment in the chat. I'll try and keep an eye on that as well. Okay, so to start with, back at the beginning, well, almost, a little bit of history around open access. So what we need to understand when we talk about open access is that it started with closed access. So this sort of traditional print publications of journals, had been the way we had done things for many a year. However, with the introduction of the internet in the sort of 1990s, we start to have this awareness, this understanding that we can translate those printed documents into electronic documents and they can be spread and shared more widely. However, there is a capitalistic nature to journals. We do live in a capitalistic society and world in general, and information in and of itself is not necessarily freely available, particularly when it is, funded through particular routes. So it could be privately funded or it could be publicly funded, and there starts to be this conversation specifically centering around publicly funded research, insofar as that the research outputs, the journal articles, should be available to the public because we paid for that research. And so it kind of led to this scenario where the public were paying for both the research and having to pay again to access the results of the research. And this was called double dipping. And this was obviously quite frustrating to everybody involved, including the publishers for sure. They are a private company and business, but they also want to keep customers happy. So it meant that a change had to occur in the methods through which we were being able to publish the outputs of our research, the results that were coming out of that research. So the key milestones that kind of started this sort of transition into making things a little bit more open from the traditionally closed access is we have the archive repository, so around 1991, for sharing preprints. So outputs that had not yet gone through that peer review publication process. So good quality, work, but haven't had that peer review yet. So preprint servers are starting to pop up here and there, and subject specialisms are starting to occur, and that information can be shared that way. But then we get the Budapest Open Access Initiative in 2002, which defines what open access is. And then we get the Berlin Declaration on Open Access in 2003, which promotes the, open dissemination of public information and knowledge to all, which you wouldn't think you would need to share that, but somebody had to say it at some point, and here we are. And then what we start to get is this transition of funders and specifically government bodies introducing specific policies that require research to be open and accessible. So we're starting to get this change in demand from researchers and specifically from large organisations. And this is starting to gather speed, particularly now in 2026, where we're starting to look at not just open access of the outputs of the results, but also into more of an open research movement, which includes sharing things like the data, methods, and educational resources openly, so that at every stage of that research process we could consider sharing how we did our research. And that ties into things like, you know, transparency and reproducibility and all those good things. Okay, so what this meant was that the route through which we publish, the publishers, had to start figuring out how they could adapt to these changing needs and demands of, you know, various people. And they have a right as a business to earn money to pay their staff. They do have to, you know, buy their houses and pay their bills. So we need to make a change to the model from the traditional closed route into how can we make things openly available but still survive within that environment. So that basically meant that we had a shift away from the traditional subscription models where libraries and individuals purchased access to the product and then gained access to it. You know, there's growing expansion of online materials, things being shared, things being accessible. But it's not really, you can't just make a sudden change to an entire ecosystem of publication. So alternative options started to be proposed, different models of making things open. And this led to things such as hybrid journals, which is to say that they offered both avenues of closed subscriptions, so pay to access, or open through gold level open access, where you pay an article processing charge, so you're covering that fee for that publisher to do the editing work that they need to do and the website hosting that they need to do, and that article has become available to access through that. So some are closed, some are open, some are hybrid. We have fully gold open access, which is where the only way to get published in that journal is by paying that article processing charge. So there's not even a traditional route available. And then we have things that are called transformative agreements or read and publish. This is specifically centering around how libraries and institutions gain access to read papers for students to study from, and also for researchers within those institutions to also publish in those journals for the students to read. So it's a bit cyclical that way. So we have these agreements in place which supports hybrid, in that we are you know, paying to access the information, but we're also paying to make things openly available to be consumed. And this, you know, is a process that really iterated and took time. It's not something that happened literally overnight. Someone would trial something, they would figure something out, they would see if a model worked, a different company might pick that up. Conversations are ongoing between librarians, between publishers, between researchers, government, public funded bodies. It's a bit of a cauldron of conversation. And within this, we need to include things such as Creative Commons licensing. So copyright law is quite a big element of all this. And I will touch on that a little bit briefly later on. We've got things such as repository deposits and embargo management. How do we have access to materials? At what point in the publication process do we hand over the copyright of something? And what are the requirements that we need to meet as researchers with our funders, and how can the publisher support that process? So there's a real sort of three-way handing over of a flow of work, as it were. So it's iterative in that it changes. So that's a lot of information to try and catch us up to speed. So hopefully that's not too heavy, but you can't really talk about what open access is if we don't cover some of that history in the first place, because it all is contextual. Yes. So the question is, what is open access? Okay. Simply put, open access makes research outputs freely available online. It aims to improve visibility, accessibility, and supports the impact of your work. So more open and accessible your work is, the more people can see it, the more people can use it, and the greater your impact is going to be. If anyone has ever heard of the Research Excellence Framework, the REF, that's very much centered on, is there impact of, what impact has your research had? Is it world-changing research, which would be lovely, but not everything can be, but there's a scale there. Anyway, what it does is it supports wider knowledge sharing beyond just subscription barriers. So we're really starting to be able to share our research outputs with the public, with more researchers. We're just really being able to share that information, which is always a nice and good thing to do, share information. And of course, whilst it's ethically lovely to share, it also is linked to funder and institutional policy requirements. So there's a bit of carrot and there's a bit of stick there. It's lovely to share, and also we are required to. So huzzah, here we are. Okay, now forgive me for my bad drawing skills, but I attempted to visualize the elements that I have been talking about. So on the left hand side, we've got the traditional subscription closed access model that we had for many years. And then on the right hand side, we have fully open access, sort of gold level options where we pay the article processing charge to cover those fees for all that publication processing, and we make the product open. And then we've got the green and gold in there as well. I'll touch on that in a little bit. And in between, you've got hybrid, which most journals are nowadays, are either hybrid, so they offer closed as an option or open as an option, or they fully flipped into being completely gold and open and accessible, and their funding route is only through article processing charges. Okay, give me a thumbs up if that image is helpful in any way. I tried to draw it as clearly as possible. Let me know in the comments if not. Awesome, good, fabulous, thank you. Okay, so let's dig into gold, green, and I'll even mention diamond, even though I didn't include it in my image. Diamond out. We'll get on to diamond. Okay, so what is gold open access? Okay, so it's the final published version, which is immediately free to read. It's specifically published through the journal's website, so an open access journal or a hybrid journal, depending on how they classify themselves. It will, may involve a article processing charge, so that can range anywhere from few £100 to well into the 10,000s. Nature and very expensive, but they have that prestige, so here we are. And sometimes we may include them in a read and publish agreement to cover that article processing charge. So the way I think of gold OA is she fancy. She's got her hair done, her makeup done, she's got her gown on, she's publicly available, and she's showing off. She's got all her copy editing done. She's gone through the peer review process. She's gone through all the editing. She's hosted on the publisher's website, and they can promote it, and you have that sort of broad affiliation. So lots of benefits to gold in that you get that affiliation directly with the publisher. People can go to that journal title and discover your article and read it for free, and that improves your sort of accessibility, your visibility, etc. The con is, all she expensive if she is not covered by a read and publish deal through your institution. You're going to have to find the article processing charge money to pay for that cost of publication through that route. Now, this is where we kind of start edging into alternative areas. There are ways, if they are hybrid, you could select to go through the sort of closed subscription route, and you can still elect to be open, just not through the publisher. So there are avenues to achieve open if we don't have thousands of pounds through our grant or any other location that we might have, or not have money to pay for gold level open access. So gold is lovely if we can have it, but it's not the only route to achieve open. So again, I'm just going to flip back a few slides to this publishing routes. Open access, you've got your green and your gold routes. Gold is fancy, but she does cost a bit of money. Alternatively, we have green level open access. Okay, and I love green. Green's my favourite. She doesn't cost any money and we still achieve that open access element. Admittedly, it's through a repository, so an institution's repository such as Keel's Work Tribe repository versus that sort of publisher's website. So there's a slightly reduced capacity for people to serendipitously find your article through that publisher. Potentially, that is an argument that could be made, but equally, with how the internet gathers information, you know, their little Google web crawlers are always finding information. If someone searches for your article, the repository will equally come up just like the publisher's website would. So there we go. So the author deposits their version of the manuscript, so before the copy editing takes place. This is called the author's accepted manuscript. So in a bit I'll show you a timeline and it'll make more sense, but there's your version before you hand it over to the publishers and they make changes to it to make it look pretty. There may or may not be an embargo in place that the publisher can put onto you. This is institutionally specific. Some institutions have policies in place which mean no embargoes. Huzzah. And some places don't yet have those policies in place, in which case your version, your author accepted manuscript, might have a 6 or a 12-month embargo before it can go available to the public. Okay, but it does support compliance without that article processing charge in place. So green is a really good route to open access if we can't afford gold or there's not a route to have access to gold. Gold has been designed specifically with the publishers to make life easy and streamlined, but it does cost, like many things in life. The nice route sometimes costs a bit more if you want the first class ticket, as it were. Okay, so the way I think of green is she's just a bit plainer. She's your version. She might have a spelling mistake in it, or the formatting isn't quite as pretty on your version. It's gone through peer review. Absolutely, it's gone through peer review, but it hasn't had that, nice little bit of editing that the publishers do, and she exists in a repository, not on a publisher's website. But the core components are your article has been peer reviewed and it can be freely shared. So she's a little bit fancy with, she hasn't got a full hair and glam done, but other than that, she's exactly the same. Okay. There is a third option, which I will mention here, but I don't typically always mention, which is diamond open access, which is to say that it's a publisher has the capacity to share your work through their website for no fee, so no article processing charge. And how they get money to pay for all these costs that I mentioned earlier for all these people to do that work is it might come through institutional funding, there might be a private society, or there might be a consortia where people all put money into a pot to pay for this journal to have fully open access, no fees to the researchers. They're quite common in community-led and scholarly-led publishing, and they're very, pro supporting equitable access to publishing. We don't want to you know, penalise people who don't have giant funding pots to pay for article processing charges. Part of the reason I think we call it diamond open access is because diamonds used to be, before all the lab grown elements, diamonds used to be quite rare. And so diamond open access is not super common. They do exist, and so you can hunt them down if you are interested in gaining that sort of publisher-led open access element, but don't have the money available to pay that article processing charge. Diamond could be a route for you, but I still think green is probably the easier route. Diamond open access is lovely, but just not super common. So I will mention it in case you come across it in the wild and you think that Jodie never told me about diamond open access. They do exist and I love them, but they're just not super common because the capitalistic nature that we're in, it's a little bit harder to get that money in place to pay for all that funding that is required for full publication that way. So, hey. Okay. So just to recap for a moment, catch our breath, we've got gold open access, which is immediate open access through the publisher's website, but article processing charges often apply. We've got green open access, where the article is made open through an institution's internal repository, but there may be embargoes in place depending on your institution's specific rules. We've got diamond open access, which is lovely, no article processing charges and free access to readers on the website, but they are definitely on the rarer side to come across them. So different models may suit different disciplines and different funding situations. So on the one hand, as I said at the very beginning of this session, it's all quite simple really. And on the other hand, it's not that simple because it can be dependent on your unique situation on which avenues are available to you and of interest to you. Okay, just to take a brief detour momentarily into copyright, which everyone freaks out when I say copyright because laws and things and it gets all very creepy and scary. But I promise Creative Commons is the friendliest route into making sure that you are covered correctly for sharing your works appropriately. So there are different licenses available depending on how open you would like to be. Do you want, full openness, which is what we recommend, which is called the CC BY 4.0. So the sort of most open, it's saying do what you like with this research so long as you cite me. As a librarian, I'm a big fan of referencing. I want to know who told you what. And this is basically the same concept, is I'm freely sharing my works with you so long as you accredit me with the original content. There are more restrictive licenses available, such as CC BY non-commercial NC, which basically says the public can do what they like with this. However, if you are a commercial entity, no, you may not. And some people do prefer that option. And again, it's a unique situation. You might have specific funding requirements. You might have specific policies in place that influence how you engage in making that work open whilst, being in the middle of all of the conversations that you need to be in. So again, very simple on the one hand, but unique and would need further conversation with yourselves if you wanted support, for example, in picking a license. So really good to know that Creative Commons licenses are on your side. When you are going through that publisher process, they will ask you, what license do you want? My recommendation is to pick the most open license, CC BY, where you are freely sharing your work as much as possible, because you will get the most visibility, the most credit, the most communication as a result of sharing it as widely as you possibly can. Okay, I am on time. I am so thrilled. I thought I was going to go too slow, but if I am going too quick, let me know as well. well, because I do know I talk quite quickly, and people have asked me to slow down before. Okay, so again, connected to copyright law. Yeah, so it's just Creative Commons licensing by the level of openness. So CC BY is Creative Commons license by fully open, non-commercial, but this. So when you see CC BY, it just means by the level of openness. Yeah. So what I would recommend, and again, I could do a whole session on Creative Commons and licensing, but I'm trying to stick within my allotted time. But if you Google Creative Commons licenses, their website is super friendly, and they have a license tool where you can enter your answers in and it will generate the appropriate license for what you're most interested in. So do check out that in your own time. Okay, so connected to Creative Commons licenses and publishing and everything, and the green route specifically, there was mention of an embargo. So on green, sometimes we have embargoes in place. And that's part of copyright law, and publishers obviously wanting to be the place people go to access that information. And if it's behind a paywall, people will have to pay to access that material. So if we have gone for the closed route because we don't have funds to pay for article processing charges, we might pick the green and put it into an institutional repository. Now, what some institutions have realised and introduced is what's called a rights retention policy, which basically asserts copyright ownership as an institution on behalf of affiliated researchers. So if you are in Keele, for example, we have a rights retention policy at Keele where we help authors to keep the rights to their copy of their work without an embargo, which I am a big fan of. We love it. We love the rights retention policy. Yes, I am nerdy, but I hate an embargo. I want to share work immediately. I want to get it out. So basically, it puts in place a copyright element that asserts you retain your rights to your version of your work at the author accepted manuscript stage, and it can go straight into the repository and straight away be made available to sharing and to the public. They can have their copy of their version of record, their version that goes into the paywall subscription element of the journal, but you still retain rights to share your works via the green avenue. So we love a rights retention policy. If any of you happen to not be Keele affiliated, do check with your institution if they have a policy in place. I would say we're sort of about 50-50 at the moment in the broader HEI higher education world, where half have policies in place, half don't, and the half that don't are like considering doing it. It's a bit of a faff to set up, but we did it and I am thrilled. Okay, so just as a timeline, because I appreciate I've used a lot of acronyms and specialist language, but there's no way around talking about the topic without using some of them. So let's just talk through a timeline of events. Let's say that we've written a paper. So we've got our draft manuscript. Let's see, where are we? Comments. That's really helpful. I have been concerned that by sharing through Keele repository, I could be breaching the embargo contract with the publisher. No, absolutely. It is concerning, but the rights retention policy has got you covered. What I would say is to double, triple confirm that you are safe. You can include a little statement, which we have available via our SharePoints, which reasserts the policy and the rights that you have through Keele, to remind the publisher that you have asserted your rights to retain that author accepted manuscript version. If you have any questions about that, get in touch with me. I can send you the little insert. Most publishers we wrote to, so they had been pre-informed, which is our legal requirement, but it never hurts to remind them by including a little paragraph that we've got to remind them, but you don't have to do that. But anyway, right, so timeline. So you've drafted your manuscript, you've got your version, you submit it to the journal title that you are interested in. They accept it, they send it through to peer review, they send it back, you have your changes, all good, it's been accepted and peer reviewed. This is your author accepted manuscript. So she's still a little bit rough around the edges, she's a bit plain, but she's gone through the key process of that peer review. That's your version to keep and to share, and that's the version that we would put into the repository. When we then hand that over to the publisher, that becomes their version of record. Okay, and that's the pretty version where they copy edit it and they do all the formatting and the styling and put the makeup on and the hair goes up and it goes out onto the website. That's their copyrighted version of your works. Okay, so we've got author accepted manuscript and the version of record, and that legally is where the things separate. And then we can move forward. It goes off into the publisher's website and we can submit the green version of it into the repository and we can get that sharing. So it may be that we have, and certainly at Keel what we do is we have a green version and the gold version. Lovely stuff if we can have both, just so that we've got the records available. Okay, so again, I'm going to talk generally around publishing here. So some publishers might have a slightly different timeline where they specify exactly which version can be shared, but typically it's the author accepted manuscript. If you do not have a rights retention policy in place, then they can state how long the embargo needs to be between their published version and your version going live, but at Keel we have the rights retention policy, so that's not such an issue. There are different licensing options that they can propose. They might have a suggestion of what they prefer. Again, it's a conversation to be had, but typically it will be one of the Creative Commons CC BY licenses. And it is up to you to check that the journal and publisher are happy with you moving forward. Typically it's a workflow, so each stage it's quite clear what they're asking you to do, but double check, and if you get stuck at any point, come and get some assistance. There are funder open access policies in place, so we're dealing with the publishers themselves, but we also have our funders stating that things need to be done a certain way, and typically things have been streamlined enough between the publishers, the funders and the institutions that we have a process in place. But what I will say about open access is it's still live, it's still growing, it's still changing. UKRI emailed in the last month to say that in about 4 years there's going to be a slight change to how they do one of the elements of their funding pots. So it is always changing, so you just need to sort of be vaguely aware of the conversations that are going on, and specifically if you are funded, what are the requirements that they're asking you to do. Yeah, non-compliance would be a bad thing, for example. Article processing charges are the things. Yes, so a CC BY NCND is Creative Commons by non-commercial and non-disclosure. So I think, bearing in mind I'm not a copyright expert, so I would have to triple check this because I always double check anything copyright related. The non-commercial is no commercial entities can use it and make money on it, basically, on your works. The non-disclosure, I think, is that they can't then shout about it, so you can't go off and tell people about, you can just privately look at the work. But I don't recommend it. I know it's really tempting to go for more restrictive licenses, but the evidence indicates the best results are by being the most open. And controversially, and I'll just say it because it happens, it exists. If it is on the internet, people can access it. So if you have licensed it to be the most open, you get the most benefit versus people just taking it. And obviously, that's not pleasant to think about. We don't want to think about people just stealing our works, but people pirate information all the time. Whereas if we have applied the most open license, we have the best chance of being accredited for our works, regardless of the situation. So yeah. Okay. Yeah, article processing charges basically are the fees. Yeah, you're welcome. Are basically just fees that help publishers pay for publishing. Do their fees need to be that high? I'll leave that question with you. Yeah. Um, enough said about how much people are charged for these processes. The good news is not all open access journals charge article processing charges. There are different routes to having gold level open access that don't cost an arm and a leg. For example, institutional agreements may reduce or remove those article processing charges, but you do have to check before you submit. Okay. The library does lots of things, but we cannot do everything, and you have to make sure that you are engaging with the publishers correctly. Okay. This is where predatory publishing does come into the conversation a little bit. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but unfortunately, predatory publishers do exist, and they are for profit and aggressive in how they get there. What they will typically do is approach early career researchers. They will send aggressive email invitations. They will say it's a really quick turnaround. We've got really good results. And they will take your works and not release them unless you pay lots of money in fees and charges. And that can be damaging to your credibility in the lifetime of your career. They're not super common, but they do exist. If it seems too good to be true, it probably is. Just be cautious. What I recommend is checking if the journal is indexed in a trusted database, such as Web of Science, for example, that we have here at Keele. Have a look at the information on the website. Who is on the editorial board? Can we dig into them? Do they actually exist? Are they real people? Be really cautious of fast publication promises. And I really like the Think, Check, Submit tool, which is available on the internet. So if you just Google Think, Check, Submit, you can enter the title of the journal that you're interested in, and it will provide you with credible information on the trustworthiness of that publication process. Yeah. You can also ask me and I'll double check as well for you. Okay, I've mentioned briefly throughout read and publish deals. These are agreements that libraries, HE institutions have as part of a sort of consortia where we all get together and negotiate with the big suppliers of journals. No problem like that, that's fine. Where we ask for a bundle deal to read and publish in specific journals. So you get the sort of fancy gold level option of publishing on those big suppliers' websites, journal websites, but you don't personally have to pay the article processing charge. So sort of the best of all worlds, it's free because of the deal that the library has in place, and you get that gold level access. There are a few requirements to meet the contractual needs for the read and publish deal, which is that the corresponding author, it has to be the corresponding author's institution, so you have to be at Keele. You need an institutional Keele email, and it needs to be in one of the listed offered journals. To make this pretty easy, you can just skip one slide ahead, go to our journal search tool, which brings together all of the deals that the library has for all of the titles, and it will tell you whether it's fully covered, tick with the library pays, or whether there is just a discount on the article processing charged fee. So the journal search tool brings together all of the sort of read and publish gold level titles that we have into one place. So do consider using the deal that we have. We pay lots of money for you to have access to them. So I would encourage you to use them, and you get the best of all the benefits of publishing through Gold that way. If you would like more information, you can go to Library Research Services SharePoint, and specifically we have a page on funding open access, which covers all of the information that I've mentioned here, and also goes into things like if you are UKRI funded, we do have a UKRI grant funding pot to support gold level open access if there is not another way to achieve open that for your particular circumstances. There is, of course, institutional support available, so the library and research support teams can advise on open access publishing. We have the repository teams who can assist with the deposits and compliance elements. We've got the journal search tool, which I am thrilled about. That came in this year, so I'm just encouraging everyone to use it. And we have broad training and guidance available, so do check all of that out. Hopefully, the key takeaways for this session are that you have a better understanding now of the difference between the different open access publishing models. You can check with the publisher and the funder what their requirements are and understand what that conversation is. Be cautious around unfamiliar journals and to seek institutional support when you are planning your publication. That's basically it. I've done that in perfect timing, so I am thrilled because I thought I was going to overrun. If you do have any questions or would like to chat to me about this, let's have those conversations now. What I'll do is I'll stop the recording, and if anyone wants to ask any questions, we can do that now. Oh, and I will just say, if you want to get in touch with us, we've got research.openaccess@keele.ac.uk where you can get in touch with us. Cool. Okay, let's stop that recording. Beautiful.